Hey, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Sullivan, thank you for your testimony today. Given your role as the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at Adama, it seems that you are very familiar with compliance and risk regimes when it comes to safe banking. Can you walk me through, if the Safe Banking Act were to become law, how the current safe harbor for financial services institutions would work?
Thank you. If the Safe Banking Act, the way it was written today, was pushed forward, the concern would be is that there would not be any, there wouldn't be steps to ensure that financial services that would be provided to cannabis-related businesses would be legitimate. There would not be proper governance and controls in place that financial services would have to ensure that they were doing, to include really addressing some of the major things that we focus on, and a lot of the other financial institutions in the industry today focus on, which is legacy cash. We also know that credit card networks do not allow cannabis transactions today. We know merchant acquirers are establishing fictitious names, such as flower shops, to process these transactions. So money laundering is happening. And it really, honestly, it's going to dilute the standards that many of the industry is performing today.
Thank you. One final question for you. In your testimony, you discussed requirements to ensure that banks have the appropriate risk controls and processes in place if they were to bank cannabis. Can you give a little more detail on what those requirements would look like? You started to talk about the legacy cash and other issues. Love for you to continue that conversation.
Absolutely. So with our program and with what our recommendations are, we would like to see that financial institutions really have to have a strong and robust framework. They need to really work with their board to make sure they have board-approved risk limits. Their deposit ratios versus their total deposits need to be within line so they don't have a concentration. Legacy cash, for example, all legacy cash deposits must provide documented evidence of the source and the origination of that ownership, to include any evidentiary documentation for that cannabis transactions. What's important to note is just because cash gets banked, it does not mean that money laundering is not occurring. If financial institutions are not taking their role and responsibility to, one, know who their customers are, ensure that they understand where these source of funds are coming from, and do the continued due diligence and transaction monitoring that has to be done in this industry, it would be a money launderer's holiday if banks are not going to take this position seriously.
Thank you. Dr. Sabat, you talked about synthetic marijuana and the real impact that it has on the brain, some of the challenges that we have. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. With my minute and 47 seconds, I'm going to ask you a compound question. Second part is, can you explain your concerns about the impact of cartel activity in the United States as it relates to safe banking, allowing for perhaps more fentanyl to flow through?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm concerned with is the active ingredient in marijuana, THC. Marijuana has hundreds of ingredients in it. It's a very complex plant. But we know that THC acts on receptors throughout the brain and the rest of our body that regulate a whole host of activity, coordination, reward, and memory. That's why marijuana can be addictive. In fact, 1 in 3 Americans who use in the last year, according to all the studies, fall under what we call a cannabis use disorder or addiction. And so when that THC enters that brain, especially as that brain is developing, 25, 30 years old, 21 is a political number. It's not a scientific number when we have age limits of 21. It's really 25 or even 30. And so it has the ability to really affect that person as that brain is growing, as that brain is developing. So now we've learned how to genetically breed marijuana to increase that THC to levels we couldn't have imagined 10 or 15 years ago. The fact that so much of the industry is selling these high potency concentrates that can be up to, they claim, 99.9% THC shatter, or these waxes, these are products that did not exist before this industry started. It's really interesting. Not that what we had before was great either, obviously with transnational organizations running the whole thing, but this legal industry has innovated in such a way that they've created kid-friendly products. The gummy bears, the candies, the concentrates, it never existed before legalization. The second part of your question about the underground market, I really do worry about the ability of cartels and transnational criminal groups to take advantage. They're already taking advantage of the system. Illegal marijuana markets have grown in legal states, not shrunken. People might say, well, why is that? We've legalized something. Why would we have that? We have that because the demand goes way up. It's normalized, commercialized. It's pushed on social media. That's why I wish Congress would actually recommence an anti-drug media campaign in social media for kids to understand the true facts, not, reefer madness and scare tactics, but the true facts about marijuana. Because this industry, advertises, and so as the demand goes up, the government cannot fill that demand. The government has regulations, taxes, et cetera. The illegal market, very happy to come in much cheaper, not follow those regulations. In fact, a lot of, as cartels, they're making money from a diverse set of industries, not just one drug or one thing.
Fire, wrap up.
Human trafficking, et cetera. It's all mixed together. So I would be concerned about the cartel.
Thank you.
Activity. Thank you.